turn it over to Alyssa.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending and spending your Cinco de Mayo with us. A little bit about myself. My name's Alyssa. I am on Bray Road, which is near the Wood School, so the opening of Sconneck, which is an area that's, I guess, kind of infamous for shaky internet coverage, but I'll get to that in a bit. I'm 22, so I'm on the younger side, and I went to Fairhaven High School. I went through the media production program there, and that's where I really started doing work as a photographer, a videographer, just overall content creator. And as you can imagine, that involves a lot of work through the internet, sharing files, uploading, downloading, all that great stuff. So as I've gotten more and more into that work, I've really realized how important the internet is. And of course, through school as well. At Fairhaven High School, you may know they started the Chromebook program, which was great because it essentially gave everyone equal access to a device to do schoolwork, which, if anything, that shows you just how prevalent internet work has become. And so we would take these Chromebooks home and you could work from home there. And a lot of our work is done through Google Drive. And that's a really collaborative process. You can work with group mates on projects and things like that. And since I started college at the University of Rhode Island, that has only grown. And I know everyone really has their focus on how education has been transformed by the pandemic. But to be honest with you, I was thinking about it, and really since I started college, it's been a lot of online work. And my connectivity here from home, because I commute back and forth to URI, has really bolstered my education. Even before the pandemic, I was taking about 1 to 2 online classes per semester. And I could only do that if I had good, strong connection. And I think that the pandemic didn't really worsen the internet connections, and it wasn't a burden. I think it was more just exposing the problems that we already have in town. And I really realized that, and this is the reason why I joined the committee about a year ago. My parents were looking at wanting to cut the cord, as they say. It's kind of a trend nowadays to get rid of your cable and instead do streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all that good stuff. And I was the one who kind of took on this project for them of cutting that cord, redoing our packages, all that stuff. And it took months. It took, I think, 2 full months to fully get us to a different package. And I was just in awe of how difficult it was. And I was like, there's gotta be a better way to do this. And I also, I did my research. I really wanted to like help my parents out, get them in a good position, save a little bit of money. And I was like, okay, let's look for competitors. And I did my research. I looked all over online, and I was finding competitors, but they were serving other towns around Fairhaven, not in Fairhaven. And I was like, well, what is that? We don't have any other providers in town. How can that be? Is no one else paying attention to this? And I was all worked up. And then I was approached, and I learned that there was an opening on the Broadband Study Committee, and I learned a little bit more about it, what the project is, as Jeff will tell you all the nitty-gritty details soon. But I was just so excited to join, and I was like, we need to do something, because we're in a predicament, and honestly, COVID has only exposed it. COVID isn't the reason why we're in the situation. It's just revealed the situation that we've been in for a while. So for details for the packages, I live on the neck. I'm pretty sure it's 200 megabytes per second download, and then a much lower upload. And we're paying about $102 a month, which again, if you compare to other areas with more competition, that's kind of high, and you'll see more when Jeff presents. If anything, I just want to say the main points are that I think going into the future now, I really think that it's all about connectivity, having good, strong, reliable internet. It's not a luxury, it's more of a necessity to operate. I couldn't even imagine trying to do everything that I do with photos and videos and all that. That's where I make my money and where I'm going to go now as I graduate URI this year. Um, I could not do this stuff if it wasn't for the internet. So it's really not a luxury anymore. It's really a necessity. Um, and attending these meetings over the past year has shown me that there really are better, more feasible options out there that will, in a way, liberate Fairhaven and give the power back to the people. Because right now, with no competition, as anything, as any business, when there's no competition, the power lies with the entity providing. It's not with the people anymore. So it's not just wishful thinking. There are some really great options out there, and you'll hear the critical parts of the plan, including the costs, improving quality, the upload and download speeds, better reliability, raising the value on homes, businesses, in the entire town. And just to keep in mind, there are different options on how we can move forward. We're not the first community to do this. This will be opt-out. It's not going to be forced on anyone in town. It's very fiscally doable for the town. And there is a good return on investment for both us and the ISPs that will be able to come in and give us service. And Jeff will, of course, will go into that as well. So just one last note for me is that if you are interested in getting involved, if you're very excited about this, as I am, visit the website. It's connectfairhaven.com. You can contact us through there. There's a little tab dedicated to contacting us. We're going to have yard signs that are very nice looking, if I do say so myself. They say own your internet, and you can get in contact with us to get one of those. Contact the town clerk's office to get your precinct's town meeting representative, because as we'll get into, the power to move forward with this study is going to fall in the laps of the town meeting members as we go to town meeting in June. So you really want to get in contact with your precinct representatives and let them know that you think this is great and why you think it's great. And yeah. And then the last note I have is that if you are passionate or know someone who would be passionate and have the time to dedicate to this, we'll have an opening on the board in about June in the summer. So it would be great if someone could step up to the plate and help us out. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I appreciate you all coming and listening, and get your questions ready, and I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Excellent, Alyssa, well done. That was great. Alyssa's been a fantastic member of the committee. She's been very engaged, very helpful, and doing stuff like this tonight, which has been really, really useful. Well, welcome. Thank you for taking time on Cinco de Mayo. We're going to try and be efficient here, and probably 25 minutes going through material, and then we'll open it up to questions. We'll stay beyond the hour if there are questions that flow beyond it, but we target to be done within the hour. Try and be respectful of your time. So as Alyssa said, there's a question, which is whether broadband has really risen to the level of these other acknowledged utilities, things that are essential to modern life, obviously water systems, sewer systems, electricity. And so the question Alyssa raised, which is an important question, it's an important policy question, is, are we now at the point where broadband should be treated as essential infrastructure? And we don't treat it that way nationally from a policy perspective. We still treat it as either a luxury item or as a nice to have. And the reason I say that is that we don't expect that everybody necessarily will be connected. So there are a lot of people that are either poorly connected or not connected. And as the pandemic has certainly accelerated the debate over whether broadband's essential, but it's an important consideration. And the select board has taken this very seriously in organizing the committee and been supportive of the process over the last year as we've worked through that. But that's a key question that we've been discussing. So there's a lot we've learned from COVID-19 relative to broadband. I think we've learned that broadband infrastructure is essential. It's essential for school. It's essential. I mean, a lot of doctor's visits started happening across the internet network. So when we say broadband, we really are talking about, broadband refers to a certain speed or capacity of the network, but really the way for all of us to think about it is it's internet infrastructure and what flows across those pipes. That's really what broadband is. A second item that we've learned from COVID-19 relative to broadband is that many people can and will continue to work from home. So that's not a trend that's just going to disappear in July or August. This will continue because we've demonstrated that people can be productive from home. Many people prefer it. We save all the commuting time. We all understand this. And then lastly, much of our infrastructure nationally is very old infrastructure. And when we say it's 30 to 40 years old, that's not an exaggeration. It's old cable plant or old telecommunications plant that was repurposed to carry the internet. And there's much better media, which is fiber optics, available now, which we'll go into in more detail. So these are important lessons. There's obviously a lot of attention at the national level and a lot of federal money that's flowing to broadband networks. And because Fairhaven's been working on this project, the town now is in a shovel-ready state. It's in a position to move forward. So that means it's in a position to apply for broadband grants as they come available from the federal government. All right, so why fiber? If you don't know a lot about fiber optics, it's important that you understand some basic things about it. One thing to understand is, what are the alternatives? So DSL really refers to what the telephone companies, the legacy telephone companies have provided. Verizon is the legacy telephone company in Massachusetts, at least in much of Massachusetts, in your area. And when we say DSL can do 100 megabits per second, that doesn't mean anybody that has a DSL connection will get 100 megabits. It just means it could do it. Most people actually experience quite a bit lower than that if they have DSL. Second, there's a lot of talk right now about Starlink. And Starlink is the low orbit satellite system that Elon Musk has put up in the sky. And so because Elon Musk championed Tesla, which has been very successful, I think a lot of people thought that maybe this would be an internet solution for them, and that they would get they would get sort of a Tesla of internet service providers through this technology. Starlink is really designed for people that live in remote rural areas where they have really poor connectivity or no connectivity at all. It is not going to compete with fiber optics. So they're projecting that it could get up to 150 megabits. We've talked to some people that have actually demoed it, tested it, and they were getting up close to 100 megabits. There were the biggest problem they were experiencing was packet loss. So the reliability was different. It was not as good as what they had experienced on, say, a cable network. Third is cable. and Comcast is the dominant cable provider in Fairhaven. Cable can do up to 940 megabits per second. That doesn't mean that if you're on cable, you would get that or be willing to pay for it, because it's more expensive the faster your speed. But it can get up close to what we call gig speed. Gig means 1,000 megabits per second. So it is the reason so many people are on Comcast as opposed to the DSL provider is simply that the pipe is fatter. The pipe can do more, and reliability tends to be better, and speed is better. So people have moved to cable, and that's a national trend. We hear a lot about 5G. People are projecting that 5G will be able to do 2 gigabits per second or 2,000 megabits. It's still early. There's a lot more marketing around 5G than there is actual implementation of 5G. We hear so much about it, you may start to assume that lots of people out there have it. It's very early for this technology, and it's a whole topic unto itself in terms of when will it be available, what will it really do, and is all the marketing hype behind it representative of what the technology can do? Those are all questions. And then there's fiber, and this relationship between these different technologies and the capacity of fiber is not an exaggeration. It's probably actually an understatement. Fiber, we're saying here that fiber can do 25 terabits per second. That's 25 million megabits per second. And when we say that, that doesn't mean if you get connected to fiber that your connection will be that fast, because it's hard for the electronics, the computers, the servers that connect to it, to realize the full potential of what fiber can do. So what we're simply saying here is that if the computers could keep up, the fiber can carry at that speed or at that capacity. The importance of that is that you can get a significant uptick in what you experience today. And this technology is going to carry us very far into the future. And we're very comfortable saying this is 50-year technology. We all know that to say anything is a 50-year technology may be a leap, because technology changes so fast. But when you think about today, people are striving to get 100 megabits per second. And if fiber can really do 25 million megabits per second, that we're going to go a long ways into the future before we need something with more capacity. And the other reality is that the data scientists who work with fiber optics are finding new ways to improve the technology or improve the carrying capacity of fiber optics. So it's getting better. We really haven't hit the end of what it can do. So as we think about it, we think any project that's focused on an upgrade in broadband or in internet infrastructure should be a fiber optic project, because fiber is immensely more capable than everything else out there. Another concept is that probably 99% of the networks in the country are shared networks. And what that means is that you're sharing with your neighbors. If you're on a cable network, you're sharing a connection with your neighbors. And the reason they tell you that your speed will be up to X is that they can't control what your neighbors are doing, and your neighbors can affect your reliability. And so this is something to understand, something that we spent some time on in the committee. And one of the recommendations that the committee's made is that if Fairhaven goes forward with this network, which we hope they will, that it not be a shared network, that it be a dedicated network. And what that looks like is everybody has their own fiber optic connection that carries back and comes into a switch. And the importance of the switch is able to handle congestion much better than what we call a bus architecture, the alternative architecture. So the importance of this is that it increases reliability. So if the town of Fairhaven is going to go forward and sponsor this network, the recommendation from the committee is that it go to a non-shared network and a switched network for reliability purposes. The other recommendation is that the upload and the download be the same. So the technical words for that is an asymmetrical connection is one where the upload is quite a bit slower than the download. And that's the case for cable by nature is asymmetrical. Fiber can do both asymmetrical and symmetrical. And so the recommendation from the committee is that if Fairhaven goes forward, that it be a symmetrical network where the upload is at the same rate as the download, again, to improve the reliability of the network. So the other thing that the committee focused on was this idea of open access. Alyssa referred to this, and it's a key issue and a key problem with the current design implementation of the internet, which is that the ISPs, the big ISPs, not only own the service that allows us to connect to the internet, but they also own the infrastructure. And what that means is that they are the only ones that travel on that infrastructure. So the analogy that we're proposing here is that it would be akin to giving UPS a dedicated road that nobody else could drive on, or giving FedEx a dedicated road that nobody could drive on. That doesn't make any sense. And we're saying it also does not make sense anymore for our digital highways. And what the committee has recommended is that we go to a model where there's one really robust road, one robust digital road, and that road be open to any service provider that will follow the rules. And the goal is to really lower the barriers to entry so that many service providers would be interested. And what's possible with this, so Fairhaven's not the only town in Massachusetts looking at this open access model. And so what's possible is if there are a number of towns and cities in the region that move forward with this kind of project, you could host the internet service providers in a data center, and they could serve all of the customers regionally. It's attractive to the service providers because they have a whole new market they can address. It's attractive to the consumer because the competition will push the price down and give people choice, and that's important. So this is really what the committee is recommending, is the town go forward with an open access model where there are many choices and not just really what has become one dominant choice in the town today. To get to that open access state, one thing that has to happen is we need to separate the infrastructure and the services. So that means that the group or the entity that manages the network, operates it, it could be the town, or it could be a third-party company that does IT work, but that they would be different than the service provider. And the infrastructure provider would be focused on network reliability and taking care of customers at the infrastructure layer. Service providers would essentially be software companies who would be hosted in a data center. So the way to think about them is they would be in the cloud. The ISP would move from controlling and owning the infrastructure to the cloud, and they would be a software company providing the ISP service. This little video gives, it's just a minute long, and it just illustrates what this looks like. So rather than calling the internet service provider and having them schedule a time to come to your home and then, spend an hour or two at your home to provision your ISP, this is all done from the cloud. So it's essentially like shopping online. So I'll just play this and you can see how it works. You select internet service, you look at the options available. When you hit subscribe, you're going to get some legal choices, legal language, some disclosures. When you hit this subscribe button, the network's actually being built. you're being connected to an ISP in the cloud. And you can go up to your dashboard and see that you are now connected and you have connectivity to the internet. And then if you want to unsubscribe, you do the reverse, and that connection is broken, and you would go back and select a new ISP. So there's lots of value in this functionality. I'm just going to pause this now. For one, it's obviously, if you get dissatisfied, it's much easier than calling customer service or setting an appointment for somebody to come to your house. You can just switch. And it takes 30 to 40 seconds to just get on, unsubscribe, and switch your ISP. It also breeds competition. And so the customer becomes very attractive to these ISPs because they're not in charge of infrastructure. So they really just have to take care of a very narrow set of problems. And that level of competition is important because people do their best on customer service, and importantly, it drives the price down. So what does the current market look like in Fairhaven for pricing? So we looked at this a few ways with the committee. We looked at what these companies post on their websites locally. So we pulled down information on what they're advertising. We also did a survey and asked people what they're paying on the survey. And then we also had people submit their actual invoices so that we could look at actual paper data and not only see what's the line item for internet, but also what are the sort of unexplained line items that are fees, but nobody really knows what they are. So the results are that there's this introductory pricing, which is the way they, it's common for them to give you 12-month pricing, for example, to sort of get you to be a customer. And then it switches over to standard pricing. I think it would be common for people to either have that 25 megabit by 3 connection or the 100 by 10. I bet those, I think those will be the most common. But you can see for Comcast what people are paying. For Verizon, you can see that those DSL speeds are very slow. 1 megabit, 3 megabits, and then less than a megabit on the upload. They don't have very many customers in Fairhaven because of these speeds. And you can see the pricing is not bad, $40, but what you're getting for that pricing, the cost per megabit is not attractive. It's just not a very compelling proposition. For the billings or the invoices that we looked at, that the average monthly billing is $179. Often that'll include cable TV and the internet service, but you can see the combination of the two, people are paying about $180 a month. So we did modeling with the committee on what we think the town could build a network for. And we break it into 3 buckets because there really are 3 different issues to consider. One bucket is the infrastructure bucket, and that is what would it cost to build this network throughout the town of Fairhaven. I think we assumed in here a 60% take rate, which means 60% of the homes sign up. If the take rate's smaller, it would incrementally drive the price up on the infrastructure. But if we financed it over a 20-year period and we got 60% of the homes to sign up, then the infrastructure component of the cost would be $22. And then we recommended a maintenance and operation fee of $24. And that would be just whether it goes to the town or whether it goes to a third party to maintain and operate the network. That would be a monthly expense that the subscribers would pay. And then we believe we can get ISPs to come on the network at just under $10 for a 1,000 by 1,000 connection. And the reason we believe that is we've done it in other places successfully. So you can see here that I'm not sure if we're lining up on the math on this. But is that right? This is the way it breaks down.
That's a
And
typo. It's 56. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so that'll be 56. So we're thinking for $56 that the town's going to be able to bring a symmetrical gig connection to the residents of Fairhaven. And so when you compare that to, you know, conservatively, people might be paying, if we go back to the prior slide, I think it'll be common where people have the 100 by 10 and paying 78. So nearly $80 versus less than $60 for a much faster symmetrical connection. And that's the modeling that we've done with the committee. The other benefit to residents is that the infrastructure can be paid off. So we normally will set this up as a 20-year financing. People could pay it off right up front if they wanted to. But if someone decided, I'm just going to finance it, I'm going to pay the monthly $56 is something that I can afford, especially for that kind of speed. Once that infrastructure is paid off, that line item goes away. I mean, it's financed, it's paid off like a car or a house, and then it goes away. And at that point, people would be paying $34 for a 1,000 by 1,000 connection. So it's another important benefit of this model. So you may be thinking, you know, can the town of Fairhaven afford to build this kind of fiber optic network? And what we say to cities and towns is that the residents of the town ultimately pay for this network, whether they're paying it to Verizon or Comcast or some other third party, or they pay it to a Connect Fairhaven network. They're already spending the money. So the average internet on the surveys, so you can see there's different ways we can look at what people are paying. On the survey, people were reporting that the average they were paying was 102. 78 on when you look at it from the invoices that we looked at, or I think it really reflects the websites of the companies, 78 there. If you use the 102 number, the residents of Fairhaven are paying $8 million a year today. There's $8 million leaving the town for the internet expense. When you push that out over a 20-year period, it's $160 million. And so the importance of this is, for this kind of money, you could already easily finance a fiber optic network. And I think what we can demonstrate is that we can actually save people money and put in a fiber optic network and give people much better speeds than they're getting today at a lower cost. So the total that we're projecting for the town is a $17 million expense, which in infrastructure terms, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is, but it really, the cost of the network is essentially what people are paying over a 2-year period. Now, the infrastructure doesn't count the cost of the service and the cost to maintain and operate the network, but when you finance the 17 million over a 20-year period, it becomes quite affordable. Another thing we did with the committee is that we did a survey, and we had 643 residents respond. And just to summarize the data, we asked how many would support the fiber network. 77% said they would, and 22% said that they possibly they needed more information. On how important is internet speed to you, 72% said very important, 26% said somewhat important. We had people test their average connection speeds, and the averages were 151 on the download and 13 on the upload. When we asked how important it was to have choice in their ISP, their internet service provider, 78% said very important and 18% said somewhat important. And then lastly, how would you rate your current ISP? 23% poor, 37% fair, 30% good, 8% very good, and 1% excellent. So certainly room to improve in terms of delighting the customer. All right, now we're going to talk about municipal light plant. This is an article that will come up at town meeting on June 12th. And the thing to understand here is that in order for the town by law to put in this infrastructure, they have to establish what's referred to in state law as a municipal light plant. So it obviously harkens back to the day where there were communities that did not have electricity. So we're going back probably 100 years. Communities that didn't have electricity, and by state law, were given a mechanism to put in an electrical network. And as you go around Massachusetts, there are communities that own their own cities or towns that own their own electrical infrastructure. And it's under this municipal light plant law that they did it. Well, that law has evolved to now allow towns to put in internet infrastructure. But before the town can do it, they have to establish this municipal light plant. And so that's the article that's coming up in town meeting. And the process that has to be followed is 2/3 of the town meeting members have to vote yes for this, and they have to do it at 2 separate town meetings. So consecutively. So in June, we would have to have 2/3 of the town meeting members vote for it. And then at a subsequent town meeting, and that could be a special town meeting in the fall, or it could be the town meeting in 2023. If it goes well this year, there's a decent chance that there would be a special town meeting in the fall. The rules are that they have to be at least 2 months between the 2 town meetings, and it can't be more than 13 months. So basically close to a year. And that's the process. It's not expensive to put this in. There is some legal work, but it's pretty straightforward process. But it's basically a vote where a 2/3 majority votes affirmatively. So if you're a town meeting member, it's important for you to ask lots of questions and understand both what's in the report, and we're trying to summarize that here tonight, and what the implications are for the town relative to this vote. But this is the first of 2. Once this vote is done, if it passes, nothing has happened other than the first vote, because you've got to have the second vote in order to get it approved. All right, so as we wind down, yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, I also think it's important to note, it does not obligate the town to do anything with the light plants. So they're not obligated by voting the light plant. You're not obligated to actually move forward with infrastructure that is fiber optics. It just opens the door for that possibility. So I want to
it'll be an additional process, and really the process will be, can the town get enough people to participate in order to build the infrastructure? They're not gonna, it's not kind of Field of Dreams where they're going to build it and hope people come. It's going to be the opposite. They're going to get people to come, and then they're going to build it. So the town's not going to build the network unless it gets enough people to sign up to make it sustainable. And that's the process. Once the municipal light plan is set up, if it passes, then it will be go out and see if enough homeowners or business owners will sign up. And we hope also, it's very important that multifamily apartment property owners participate. That's an additional topic, but we really want the multifamily owners to also participate in the network. So if you're a town meeting member, we would encourage you to vote yes on Article 34. If you're not a town meeting member, we would encourage you to find out who your town meeting member is and contact them and encourage them to support this, so that the process can continue, so that the town can then find out if there's enough demand for this fiber optic network. So in conclusion, recommendations from the Broadband Study Committee to the Board of Selectmen were pursue an open access model, which means multiple service providers running across one infrastructure. Pursue an opt-in or voluntary participation rather than forcing people to participate. So this is not going to be a new tax. It's going to be the people that sign up, pay what we're modeling at $56 to get their internet access and infrastructure. 3, pursue an RFP for design build and an RFP for the open access partner. And then what's not on here, it's implied in number 2, is that an important step in the process is to go out and do the community engagement. And, you know, we're going to end up, I think, in the summertime doing in-person webinars like this. We're going to try and talk to everybody in the town about the network and educate them, and hope that there's enough support, enough demand for the project to move forward. And then the last one is utilize the municipal light plant structure, which will have to go through the 2 town meetings in order for that to occur. All right, so next step, establish municipal light plant, do the community engagement work, and then do network design and construction. And the timeline is, you know, roughly, it's a 6 to 12 month timeline in order to, you know, unlikely that anything in terms of construction would happen before next spring. So the goal would be to get pieces in place, find out if the community supports it, get the municipal light plant passed, and be in a position, if the demand is there, to move forward with network design and construction. And then lastly, Alyssa referred to this. We want you to go to Connect Fairhaven, www.connectfairhaven.com. There's a lot of information there. There's a new page, which is about article number 34, specific to the town meeting. And educate yourself, get your neighbors engaged. We would love it if you took a yard sign, and encourage people around you to also take a yard sign. And I'll stop there and we'll go to Q&A.
All right, we have 2 questions that have been submitted so far. So all of you that have questions, please feel free to go to the Q&A section down at the bottom of your screen and submit a question to us. These are kind of interrelated. So the first question is, the ISP cost would be on top of the fiber connection cost. Is that correct? So I think this was a question that came in before you kind of broke out the buckets of cost. Yep. So it was, you know, I think you addressed that, but you know, I guess you can go back to that right there. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, we have 3 buckets of costs. One is the actual infrastructure cost. That's the capital expense to put the fiber in, you know, to deploy it, if you will. Then you've got the monthly maintenance and operations cost. That's to keep the lights on. And if somebody is out in their front yard with a backhoe and they dig up their fiber, somebody's got to go out there and repair it and all that good stuff. And then of course the ISP costs. So the second question in relationship to this is actually referencing the video that we showed. It says the sample ISP costs, and I'm assuming they're referring to in the video, showed was $49 for a 1 gig connection. So it is true that the video narrative that we showed is over 5 years old. And when we filmed that video, the pricing, there was only a couple of ISPs on the network at that time, and the pricing was, you know, about $50 for a 1 gig ISP connection. Since then, we've had additional competition, additional ISPs come onto that network, and it's just driven the cost because of that dynamic competition down to that $9 range. In fact, right now, the gigabit connectivity for residential consumer on that network is between $10 on the low end, $9.99, and it goes up to about $15 or $19 on the high end. So there's a range there, just to be fully disclosed, or just to give full disclosure on that. So hopefully that helps you with that question. Next question, how is regular maintenance and services provided if there are connection issues, is this scheduled through the cloud? Do you want to take that one, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah, so there will be multiple ways, it's like a lot of what we do on the web, but there will be a way for you, a person for you to call. I mean, it's frustrating if you order something online and there's no way for you to talk to a human. That can be frustrating. So there will be a way for you to talk to a human. There are tools built into these technologies now where you have better transparency on what's going on with your network. So there are tools where you can see, is it a problem in your house? Is it a problem in your connection from your house out to an aggregation point? Or did the fiber get cut somewhere? So there will be tools for you to just look at. You'll be able to test your speed very easily, upload and download very easily. See if there is an in-home issue or a aggregation point issue. And then there will also be a way for you to connect to people electronically if there's some kind of issue.
Okay. If this goes through, do I need to buy new equipment to access the internet?
So this kind of network, the level of automation that's included with this kind of network it's specific equipment that will get installed in your home when it's built, and that's built into that infrastructure. So there's not an additional amount that you have to pay for your equipment. The equipment you get. So you could still use your in-home Wi-Fi router. It could connect to this, but all the equipment that's necessary to enable the network will be included in the infrastructure.
Yep. All of your PCs, all your laptops, all of those things will work just the same way they do today. Okay. Next question. How many Massachusetts towns have elected to have their own networks? And any information about how well this is going? Why don't you address that, Jeff?
I haven't counted. There's a lot more looking at it right now than have actually implemented it. I would say the number that have implemented it is somewhere between 5 and 15. And I think those are all doing well. I think the pricing on those will tend to be, what you'll end up with is you'll end up with fiber optics, and 4 gig speed, you're probably going to see price points up around $75. But it's a good question. We should do just some Massachusetts research so that we have a more clear answer. I'm not aware of any failures at the town level in Massachusetts, but we'll take it under advisement and we'll get some actual data for you. And then I can tell you that we have just our firm, and there are others doing this, just our firm is working with one larger city that's part of the Boston Metroplex, and then another town the same size as Fairhaven. But we're sort of pre-planning with 10 other cities and towns in Massachusetts. So there's a lot. Part of that's just the money that's come out with the Recovery Act and towns looking at the infrastructure funds that are going to be available. But there's a lot of activity right now across Massachusetts. And there are other projects in Massachusetts too that we're not involved in.
Okay. Will the fiber optic cables be installed underground or on the poles?
It hasn't been determined yet. I think there's some areas in Fairhaven where it will have to be on the poles. We like it in the ground because it's harder to take it out, meaning like a car crash would knock down a pole, or if there was a bad storm, it could knock the network down. So we like it in the ground. Ground buried is first choice. If it's a lot of ledge or a lot of rock, then that's not feasible. So the answer is, it hasn't been determined, but we will bury the network where possible, as long as the costs are reasonable.
Great. This is one for Lissa. How do I find my town meeting member? Just check the town website and there isn't much info about the town meetings.
Yes, that's a great question. I actually just recently looked on the website as well, and I was kind of surprised not to find it on there. So I believe if you call the town clerk's office, you can get that information, and I can actually get the number right now. I believe it's just the main number for the town hall. So the number, if you want to write this down, it is 508-979-4025. And you ask for the town clerk and they'll direct you there. And they should be able to tell you who your representative is.
Fantastic. The next
Well,
question.
One
Yeah,
more
go ahead.
time. Let's do that number one more time in case people were writing it down.
Sure.
As she just closed her phone and it's not up anymore.
I got it. It's 508-979-4025.
Great.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Okay. Next question. Jeff, it sounds like this isn't your first rodeo. There are many positives as you have described. What are some of the negative feedbacks you have heard? And how can we avoid the same experience?
Well, that's a good question. So, in the report, we identified 10 risk variables, and you can get is the report on the website? I think it is, Devin. Is that right? Linked?
It is.
Yes. So the report is linked on the website, connectfairhaven.com. At the end of the report, not the very last page, but toward the end, there's a section on risk analysis, and you can go in there and read them. So, it's things like not getting enough take rate, but still going forward. So you want to get the number of participants to a high enough level that the network is sustainable on its own. Your take rate could be impacted if you have churn. So if you have people sign up and then they leave for whatever reason, we really want people to treat this as an improvement to their property. We're bringing in the best media available in fiber optics. And we want people to treat it as an improvement to their property, which means we're going to solve the competition problem by having a number of ISPs available. So that's one. Churn would be a significant risk if there wasn't enough value proposition there to keep people sticky to the network. That's a problem. The thing I would probably be most concerned about is going to be a problem for everybody, which would be, let's say a hurricane blows up along the eastern seaboard and takes a big chunk of the network down. That's sort of the really worst case scenario. You're going to see the same problem with Comcast or Xfinity. They would attach to the poles the same way. So it's not a new risk, but it would be problematic. So anyway, there's 10 variables we deal with in the report, and you can go look at those.
And that's under the related info tab on the website. So that's how you get to that. And just scroll down. I think it's number 2 or 3 item there. Okay, next question is, how can you protect that the ISP provider costs would stay the same for 20 years? So that she's essentially saying, how can we guarantee that the ISP rates won't go up? What's your answer to that, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good concern and a valid concern. What we see happening right now is the level of engagement in this model. The likelihood is that you're going to see the reverse. So if we can, let's just say that we move into a data center in downtown Boston and we're servicing, a big chunk of Massachusetts, the eastern part of Massachusetts with a big part of the population. Because we've isolated what the service provider does to a very narrow set of problems that they're solving. I'm not going to say it's a lights out operation for them, but it really is a much more modest lift for them than what they would have to do if they own the infrastructure and operated the infrastructure. So it's It's a software play for them. Even though they're not making nearly as much money, we think their margins may be equal, comparable as a percentage to what they are today. And so what we think will happen is actually pricing pressure will move the other direction as the number of people who are subscribed. The other part of it is it's not just a regional market. So you could have an ISP in Los Angeles serve Fairhaven, which sounds crazy, but if we co-locate in downtown Boston, you could have an ISP. What they have to do is they have to be able to get to that data center, and they can. If they can get to that data center, and that's the meet point for the Fairhaven network, then they can serve Fairhaven. And so we think that's really the ultimate solution, is that it's going to become a national marketplace. And it's that national marketplace that will push the price down. Sorry, Devin, go ahead.
Yeah, so one thing I will guarantee though, we can't guarantee that the ISPs on an open access market, the pricing will go down or up. But one thing we can guarantee almost emphatically is that if Comcast maintains its monopoly status in Fairhaven, their rates will go up. And I know this because I have the same thing where I live, and my rates on Comcast have gone up twice in the past 3 years. So that's something I think is definitely inevitable.
Without competition.
Without doing anything. So anyway, okay. Next and last question so far. Now get your questions in quick, guys. With the new rail line coming to Fairhaven and other towns, I wonder if the network would favor new residents choosing this town to live. Also, perhaps new businesses will also view this favorability negatively if we don't have the network or don't have a competitive location.
Yeah.
Why don't you share what's happened in Ammon, Idaho, comparatively, Jeff?
So Ammon was the first place in the country we deployed this. And they deployed it because their neighboring city did have a fiber network and they didn't want to be at an economic development disadvantage. So, Ammon's been a huge success. It's Fast Company magazine wrote an article about it and said it's the best fiber optic network in the country. And it's had a material impact. So today in Ammon, when a new home is built, per city code, it's built with Ammon fiber. And they don't have to pay the infrastructure cost is much lower because goes into the home as it's being built. So it's much less expensive to put it in. But that line item's not there because the cost is incorporated into the cost of the home, which is incorporated in the cost of the mortgage. So they just have, today, those residents that are new to Ammon are paying $27 for a symmetrical gig. Because Ammon's maintenance and operation fees lower, their labor costs are lower there. But it's also on the economic development front, there's been a material impact. There was a study done on the economic impact, and it was, I think, a $67 million economic impact from the network. So it has an effect.
One other thing I will share with you also, there's 2 studies out right now from various universities across the country that have done estimates, and they conclude that an average home in America that gets hooked up to fiber optics has an automatic bump in appraisal value of between 3 and 7%. So it's a huge boon to the homeowners and the property owners if the city moves forward just in the increased value of their home, appraisal. So, okay, that's all the questions we've got. We appreciate everybody for attending tonight. Hope you have a fantastic Cinco de Mayo. Don't drink too many margaritas, but thank you very much for your interest in this topic. Please share with all your friends and family members, all your neighbors, the importance of the vote coming up in town meeting on June 12th. And please go to the website and get involved, learn more about this, and be a part of this program and solution. We appreciate everybody. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.